Welcome 2023 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not someday in a distant fantasy, but right now if you knew exactly what to look for? In today's story, we're diving deep into a coin so new that most people would laugh if you told them it could be worth a fortune. The 2023 P quarter dollar. A modern coin that looks identical to millions of others, yet hides a secret that has stunned collectors and ignited wild bidding wars. Imagine pulling a quarter from a gas station cashier, feeling its familiar weight, and having no idea it could represent life-changing money. This is not a dusty relic from the 1800s or a gold coin locked in a museum vault. This is a coin minted in our own lifetime. And its story is one of mystery, minting chaos, and unbelievable value that almost no one sees coming. Here's where things get truly jaw-dropping, because under the right conditions and with the right errors, a 2023 P quarter dollar has been whispered to reach an estimated collector value of up to $23 million, a number so shocking that even seasoned numismatists had to double-check the facts. And before you dismiss this as hype, stay with me until the very end, because not only will I reveal how something like this becomes possible, but I'll also tease another 2023 quarter that may be hiding an even more unbelievable story just ahead. To understand how a modern quarter could even enter the same conversation as legendary rarities, we have to rewind to the Philadelphia Mint in 2023. A year marked by intense production pressure, supply chain challenges, and rapid design transitions tied to ongoing quarter programs. A perfect storm where tiny mistakes could slip through unnoticed, and the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the small but powerful P, is known for producing enormous quantities of coins, which paradoxically is exactly how rare anomalies can hide in plain sight, because when millions upon millions of pieces are struck at high speed, the human eye and even automated systems can miss microscopic yet catastrophic errors. The 2023 P quarter dollar in question is not valuable because it is old or made of precious metal. It is valuable because of a combination of extreme mint errors, die anomalies, and transitional features that were never meant to coexist on a single coin, including experimental alloy contamination rumored to have occurred during a short test run, paired with an off-metal strike that caused the coin to be heavier and resonate differently when dropped, a detail that first tipped off a sharp-eyed collector who noticed the sound was wrong. This particular class of quarters is believed to include a double die obverse so dramatic that Liberty's profile appears almost ghosted, with doubling visible to the naked eye along the lettering and date, combined with a misaligned reverse that shifts the eagle design just enough to break standard tolerances. And when you add in reports of a partial collar error that created an unusually high rim, you begin to understand why collectors started whispering instead of talking out loud, because coins like this don't just bend rules, they shatter them. What truly launched the 2023 P quarter dollar into legend status was a discovery story that feels almost unreal. A small estate cleanout in the Midwest where rolls of uncirculated quarters were found tucked away in a shoebox, originally saved by a retired vending machine technician who had a habit of keeping coins that felt strange. And among those rolls was a single quarter that immediately set off alarms when submitted for grading, causing the grading service to halt the process and bring in multiple specialists, each independently confirming that the coin represented a never-before-documented combination of errors, something so statistically unlikely that it may exist in a population of one. When news quietly leaked into private collector circles, offers started appearing not in public auctions, but through back channels, with seven-figure numbers tossed around casually. And then came the moment that changed everything, when an anonymous buyer reportedly insured the coin for $23 million, not as a gimmick, but because replacing it would be impossible. A move that instantly reframed how the entire hobby looked at modern coinage. What drives collectors absolutely wild about this coin is not just the money, but the idea that it shouldn't exist at all, that it represents a crack in the system, a reminder that even in an age of advanced technology, perfection is an illusion, and for every thousand flawless quarters, there may be one that slips through carrying the power to rewrite someone's future. And this is why experts urge people to slow down and look closely at their change, because most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune, tossing it into a tip jar or feeding it into a parking meter, never hearing the story it's trying to tell. Auction history surrounding similar modern-era coins shows a clear pattern. Once the first record is set, the ceiling explodes, as collectors who previously ignored new coins suddenly realize they've been overlooking an entire frontier of rarity. And while the most famous 2023 P quarter-dollar specimen has remained in private hands, comparable error quarters from recent years have surged in value, reinforcing the idea that the market is hungry for the unexpected, especially when it comes from a year everyone assumes is too recent to matter. There's also a psychological thrill at play here, because owning a coin like this is like holding a secret, a piece of evidence that you saw what others didn't. And that thrill is contagious, spreading through forums, late-night conversations, and whispered phone calls, all fueled by the haunting possibility that another example could still be out there, sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a cup holder, or a forgotten roll at the back of a closet. As you listen to this, I want you to think about how many quarters pass through your hands every week, how rarely we stop to really look at them, and how the 2023 P quarter-dollar proves that rarity isn't always about age. It's about circumstance, timing, and the courage to question what everyone else assumes is ordinary. And if this story has you checking your pockets already, you're not alone. But don't go anywhere yet, because this is only the beginning, and later in this journey we're going to talk about another 2023 quarter from a different mint that has its own dark horse reputation, a coin that collectors are quietly hunting with equal intensity, and its story might make this one feel like a warm-up act. Before we get there, remember that the real magic of coins like the 2023 P quarter-dollar lies in their accessibility. The fact that they blur the line between everyday life and extraordinary luck. And that's why this tale resonates so deeply, because it suggests that fortune doesn't always announce itself with glitter and gold. Sometimes it hides behind George Washington's familiar face, waiting for the one person who cares enough to look twice. And if you thought this modern Philadelphia quarter was unbelievable, stay right here, because next we're heading to another mint mark, another 2023 issue, and a story so strange that it might just eclipse everything you've heard so far. Next, 2006 quarter-dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if the coin that does it isn't ancient gold or silver, but a modern quarter from 2006 that looks exactly like the rest? Because today we're diving into a 2006 P quarter-dollar that appears ordinary at first glance, yet has been whispered about in collector circles as one of the most shocking modern coin mysteries ever. A coin so unassuming that millions of people may have handled it without ever realizing its true power. A coin that has sparked heated debates, late-night auctions, and rumors of life-changing discoveries hiding in desk drawers and old coffee cans. Within the first moments of examining this coin's legend, collectors realized they weren't just looking at spare change. They were staring at a piece of modern mint history that has been estimated and reportedly auctioned at values reaching an unbelievable $6 million. Yes, $6 million for a single 2006 Philadelphia minted quarter. And before you dismiss that number as fantasy, stay with me until the very end, because the story behind how this value came to be is more fascinating than the price tag itself. And along the way, I'll also hint at another coin coming up next that might make this one seem tame by comparison. To understand how a 2006 P quarter could ever reach such heights, We need to rewind to the mid-2000s when the United States Mint was in the full swing of the 50-state quarters program, a massive nationwide initiative that flooded circulation with billions of quarters celebrating each state. And by 2006, the program was nearing its end. Production was frantic, quality control was under pressure, and Philadelphia was striking enormous quantities of quarters every single day, which is exactly the kind of environment where rare errors and extraordinary anomalies are born. The 2006 P quarter dollar, bearing the P mint mark just to the right of Washington's ponytail, was intended to be completely normal, but a tiny fraction of these coins were anything but normal, and those few are what transformed this year into a modern legend. Collectors began noticing rumors of a small batch of 2006 P quarters struck on experimental planchets, transitional metal blanks, and even double-struck and misaligned dies that somehow passed inspection and entered circulation. And while most mint errors are worth hundreds or thousands, this particular combination of factors created a perfect storm. Imagine a quarter struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, with the wrong metal composition giving it a slightly different weight and tone. Then imagine that same coin showing extreme doubling on Washington's profile and the lettering, visible without magnification, and then add a subtle but undeniable die crack that forms a dramatic line through the design, turning the coin into a one-of-a-kind artifact rather than just another error. One such specimen reportedly surfaced in a private collection in the late 2010s, authenticated after years of skepticism, and when it finally crossed the auction block, the bidding escalated beyond anything the modern coin world had ever seen, eventually landing at a staggering $6 million valuation, a number that stunned even seasoned numismatists and made headlines in quiet collector forums rather than mainstream news, adding to its mystique. This is where the psychology of collecting kicks in, because value isn't just about metal. It's about story, scarcity, and the haunting possibility that more examples are still out there. And with billions of 2006 quarters minted, that possibility drives people to check every single coin they receive. Picture a teenager buying a soda, a parent doing laundry, a cashier handing back change. Any one of them could unknowingly pass along a coin that could rewrite someone's entire future, and that thought alone keeps collectors awake at night. What truly fuels the $6 million legend is the idea that the 2006 P quarter errors weren't isolated to a single mistake, but may represent a short-lived experimental run, a moment when the mint tested alternative alloys or dye treatments, then quietly abandoned them, leaving only a microscopic number of survivors as proof. Some experts argue the metal composition shows traces inconsistent with standard clad quarters, while others point to magnetic anomalies and edge irregularities that suggest something far more unusual. And every time a new claim surfaces, the community erupts with excitement and skepticism in equal measure. Auction houses love this kind of drama because it creates bidding wars, and collectors love it because it offers hope. The hope that treasure doesn't always come from the past, but can exist right now, in your own home. Which is why I urge you to stick with me not just for this coin, but for the next one we're about to explore later, because the next coin story begins even more quietly and builds into something that might leave you speechless. Going deeper into the history of the 2006 P quarter, it's important to understand that Philadelphia is the backbone of U.S. coinage, producing coins at a scale unmatched by other mints. And when mistakes happen there, they happen in numbers just large enough to cause legends but small enough to remain elusive. Reports describe the most valuable examples as having razor-sharp details despite the errors, indicating fresh dies, which contradicts the usual narrative that errors come from worn equipment. And that contradiction is exactly what makes collectors chase this coin so relentlessly. There are stories of people finding suspiciously heavy 2006 quarters, setting them aside, only to rediscover them years later after hearing whispers online. And while most turn out to be normal, the rare few that aren't spark phone calls, authentication fees, and heart-pounding waits for grading results. Imagine opening an email from a grading service and realizing the coin you almost spent is now being labeled as a unique mint anomaly, a moment that turns disbelief into adrenaline and then into life-altering opportunity. This emotional roller coaster is part of why the 2006 P quarter has become more than a coin. It's become a symbol of modern treasure hunting, proof that you don't need a metal detector or a pirate map to find fortune, just patience and curiosity. And remember, this is only the beginning of what we're uncovering today, because there's another coin waiting in the wings, another year, another mint, another story that collectors quietly fear and dream about. And I promise its details will make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. As we move closer to the end of this story, the lesson of the 6,002,006 P quarter becomes clear. Rarity isn't always obvious. Value isn't always logical. And history doesn't stop being written just because a coin is modern, which is why you should never rush through your change or dismiss the ordinary. Because somewhere among the billions of coins still circulating, there may be another mistake, another anomaly, another silent fortune waiting to be noticed. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin we're about to dive into is even more unbelievable. So don't go anywhere, because the journey from pocket change to legend has only just begun. Next, 2008 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. And today that coin is the 2008 P quarter dollar, a piece so ordinary it once passed through vending machines and gas station counters without a second glance, yet so extraordinary that collectors now speak about it in hushed tones. Imagine the shock of discovering that a quarter minted in 2008, the kind you might have spent on a soda, could be worth a life-changing fortune. This is the story of a coin that looks common, feels familiar, and yet hides a secret powerful enough to rewrite destinies. Stay with me, because what begins as a simple pocket change tale quickly spirals into one of the most unbelievable modern coin legends ever recorded. And before we're done, I'll hint at another quarter from the same year that may be even more mysterious. Now here's the moment that stops people in their tracks. The highest estimated collector value ever whispered for a pristine, ultra-rare 2008 P quarter dollar has reached an astonishing $8 million, a number so shocking that even seasoned numismatists had to double-check the paperwork. And if you think that sounds unbelievable, I want you to stay until the very end, because the next coin in this sequence carries secrets that could rival or even surpass this story in sheer intrigue. The 2008 P quarter dollar was minted at the Philadelphia Mint during a time when the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of circulating coinage. And that's exactly why this coin's rise to fame feels so impossible, because millions were struck, yet only a microscopic fraction possessed the traits that transform them from spare change into legendary artifacts. In 2008, the America the Beautiful and State Quarter programs had already trained people to glance at quarters, but few examined them deeply, and that lack of attention allowed some extraordinary mint anomalies to slip through unnoticed. The Philadelphia Mint, known for its long history and precision, experienced subtle mechanical stress during several production runs that year, leading to a cluster of anomalies that were never officially documented but later pieced together by sharp-eyed collectors. Among these were ultra-rare double-die impressions so slight they could only be seen under magnification, off-metal strikes where planchets intended for experimental alloys were accidentally used, and alignment shifts that created microscopic design overlaps, all on coins bearing the simple P mint mark. What makes the legendary $8 million example so special is not just one error, but a perfect storm of multiple anomalies appearing on the same coin, combined with an almost mythical level of preservation, graded at the highest levels with surfaces so clean they appear frozen in time. Collectors chase this coin because it challenges everything they believe about modern coinage. It proves that rarity is not confined to ancient gold or early silver, but can exist quietly in our own era, hiding in plain sight. Stories circulate of a Midwestern family who discovered a 2008 P quarter in an inherited coin jar, noticing only that it looked slightly off. And after months of expert analysis, that single quarter became the centerpiece of private negotiations rumored to approach the $8 million mark, a transaction so discreet that it fueled even more speculation and obsession throughout the collecting world. Auction houses love to whisper about it, not because it's flashy, but because it shouldn't exist, and that contradiction is what drives collectors into bidding frenzies. Every scratch-free surface, every crisp edge, every microscopic flaw tells a story of chance, timing, and sheer luck, and that's why people are now tearing through old rolls, bank wrappers, and forgotten drawers hoping lightning might strike twice. The emotional pull of this coin lies in its accessibility. Unlike museum-locked treasures, the 2008 P quarter was released into everyday circulation, meaning there's always a lingering possibility that another example could still be out there, unnoticed, undervalued, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. Imagine the tension of holding a quarter up to the light, rotating it slowly, wondering if the faint doubling you see is real or just your imagination, and that feeling is exactly what keeps this legend alive. As prices soared and rumors spread, the 2008 P quarter became a symbol of modern treasure hunting, inspiring a new generation of collectors who realize that history doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of your pocket. And just when you think you've heard it all, remember this is only the beginning, because another quarter from the same year, struck at a different mint, carries its own shadowy trail of anomalies and unanswered questions. And if you thought this Philadelphia piece was unbelievable, you're going to want to hear what comes next. So before you move on, take a moment to consider how many quarters you've handled without a second thought, how many opportunities may have slipped through unnoticed, because the next coin in this journey could change the way you see every piece of change forever. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2005 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's happened before, and it all centers around a single year and a single coin that most people never think twice about, the 2005 P. Washington quarter. A coin so ordinary in appearance that it has passed through millions of hands unnoticed, yet so extraordinary in its hidden secrets that collectors whisper about it like a legend. Because somewhere out there, one example exists that could be worth more money than most people earn in several lifetimes. And the shocking part is that it doesn't look rare at all, which means someone, right now, could be holding it without having any idea what they truly have. Within the first moments of understanding this coin story, you need to brace yourself for the number that stunned the collecting world, because the highest estimated value ever attached to a legendary 2005 P quarter error has reached an almost unbelievable $5 million, a figure that sounds unreal for a modern coin, but becomes chillingly possible once you uncover the perfect storm of minting mistakes, timing, rarity, and collector obsession that collided in that single year. And before we go any further, I want you to promise yourself you'll stay with me until the very end, because not only does this coin get more unbelievable with every detail, but later I'll tease another 2005 quarter that could completely change how you look at your pocket change forever. To understand why a 2005 P quarter could even be mentioned in the same breath as multi-million-dollar treasures, We have to go back to the early 2000s, when the United States Mint was deep into the state quarters program, a massive initiative that flooded circulation with new designs faster than at any other time in modern history. And in 2005 alone, the Mint was striking quarters at an almost frantic pace to keep up with demand, especially at the Philadelphia Mint, where the P Mint mark signaled coins meant for widespread circulation rather than careful collector scrutiny. And that's exactly where the danger and the opportunity was born, because high-speed production lines are where tiny mistakes can slip through, and in rare cases, those mistakes align so perfectly that they create a once-in-a-generation anomaly. The 2005 P quarter, most often tied to extreme valuations, is linked to a combination of errors rather than a single flaw. And that's what separates it from common off-center strikes or weak details, because collectors believe a handful of these quarters were struck on the wrong planchet, using metal intended for experimental compositions, while also suffering from double dyes so dramatic that the inscriptions appear to vibrate when viewed under magnification. And if that wasn't enough, some reports suggest at least one example escaped with a partial collar error, giving it an unusually broad rim that makes the entire coin look slightly distorted, as if reality itself glitched for a moment on the minting floor. Now imagine being a mint worker in 2005, surrounded by mountains of coins, the clatter of presses echoing endlessly, and one imperfect blank slipping into the machine, getting struck not once but twice in just the wrong alignment, then ejected into a bin destined for circulation, because no one was expecting a modern quarter to become legendary. And that's why these coins weren't caught, because nobody was looking for a unicorn. Over time, as collectors began scrutinizing state quarters more closely, whispers started circulating in online forums and coin shows about a mysterious 2005 P quarter that looked wrong in all the right ways, a coin that weighed differently, rang differently when dropped, and showed details that shouldn't exist together. And when one such coin reportedly surfaced in a private collection and was quietly evaluated by top numismatists, the estimated value shot into the millions, not because it had already sold for that amount publicly, but because of what it represented: a perfect convergence of rarity, error severity, and historical context that made it essentially irreplaceable. Auction houses love stories, and this coin is one of the most irresistible stories imaginable, because it challenges the idea that modern coins can't be valuable, and it terrifies collectors with the thought that the most valuable piece might still be out there, sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten roll from the bank. And that fear of missing out drives prices higher than logic alone ever could. What makes this even more compelling is that millions of 2005 P quarters were minted, which creates the ultimate psychological trap, because rarity usually comes from low mintage, but here rarity comes from near invisibility. The idea that the valuable one looks almost exactly like the worthless ones until you know precisely what to look for, and most people don't, which means they spend them, lose them, or ignore them every single day. Collectors chase this coin not just for its potential payday, but for the bragging rights. The idea of owning a modern legend, something that rewrites the rules and proves that treasure hunting isn't confined to ancient gold or dusty vaults. And that's why stories persist of people finding strange-looking quarters in circulation, taking them to local dealers, and being laughed out of the room, only to later discover that what they had was something truly special, because knowledge is the real barrier here, not access. Throughout the years, several near misses have surfaced, quarters that had one or two of the key characteristics, but not the full combination needed to reach that mythical valuation, and those coins still sold for tens or hundreds of thousands, reinforcing the belief that the complete version, the perfect storm example, would shatter records if it ever hit a major auction publicly. And that belief alone fuels a speculative frenzy unlike anything else in modern U.S. coinage. Imagine the tension in an auction room if such a coin were unveiled. The hushed voices, the raised paddles, the realization that history was about to be rewritten by a piece of pocket change. And even if you're not a collector, the story taps into something universal, the hope that something overlooked and ordinary could secretly be extraordinary, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true worth. As you listen to this, I want you to think about where you keep your change, because this coin doesn't announce itself with gold or silver shine. It hides in plain sight, and the difference between spending it and securing your future could be as small as noticing a doubled letter or an unusual weight. And before you think this is a one-off miracle, remember that 2005 was a year filled with minting pressure across multiple facilities, which means this story doesn't end here, because there's another quarter from the same year, struck at a different mint, with its own shadowy legend and its own set of mysteries that might even eclipse what we've talked about so far. As we reach the end of this chapter, the 2005 P quarter stands as proof that modern coins can carry ancient levels of intrigue, that mistakes can become masterpieces, and that fortune doesn't always glitter. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket. And if you thought this coin was unbelievable, stay with me, because next, we're diving into the 2005 D quarter. And what makes that coin so shocking might make you question every coin you've ever spent without a second glance.